He's the state director in Virginia for American Atheists. And Rick has been appointed by American Atheists to be the Capitol Hill representative in Washington, D.C. Rick lives in Virginia, and so the Capitol's not too far away for him. I applaud Ellen Johnson's appointment for Rick. I know Rick to be a powerfully activist atheist, having probably maybe his second or third deepest passion in life is atheism. Could be the first. Rick was once upon a time in the Navy Seabees during the Vietnam era, the Vietnam War. Another atheist in foxholes. Of course, we know they don't exist. Rick is here today to give us a really important message. He's going to be talking about an atheist goes to Washington, is his subject. And he's going to tell us how he got there and what we're up against and what we hope to accomplish. Please welcome Rick Wingrove.
Hello, are there any atheists in this room?
Yeah.
I thought so. You know, they say that at the Last Supper, Jesus said to his disciples, "One of you will betray me tonight." And Peter said, "Is it me, Jesus?" And Jesus says, "No, it's not you, Peter." And Simon said, "Is it me, Jesus?" And Jesus says, "No, it's not you, Simon." And Judas said, "Is it me, Jesus?" And Jesus says, "Is it me, Jesus?" So, if there's a point to that story, it is that the religious are human too. They're just in a deep state of denial about it. They're made from the same DNA, evolved from the same communal monkeys, and are subject to exactly the same inputs and outputs as everyone else. When stressed, they behave just as badly or possibly worse than anyone else. You start with an unshakable belief system based on the imagined whims of a vengeful and unpredictable God. They try to ignore, deny, or systematically suppress their basic humanity. This not only doesn't work, it just makes things worse. But start with a corrupt paradigm, or a stupid idea, as I call it. Forcefully impose it on several billion people, and eventually, and in many ways, it'll bring out the worst behavior in people. In other words, garbage in, garbage out. Anyway, my name is Rick Wingrove, and I'm damn proud to be an atheist. And believe it or not, it's a really good time to be an atheist in America, relatively speaking, especially when you consider that for most of the last 2,000 years, we were hunted for bounty. And I still get emails from people who would like to return to certain alleged traditional values and light us up like road flares. Being an atheist was pretty lonely for quite a few years. But in the early 90s, I got my first PC, and like a lot of people in this room, first thing I did with my first PC was go online and start looking for atheists. Found a lot of them. And you know, I got to tell you, in this country right now, atheists are coming out of the woodwork. Ironically, we can thank the current president for a lot of that, for bringing atheists out of the closet. The leader of the free world, the most powerful man in the world, the man with his finger on the nuclear trigger, is a man who thinks that the earth is 6,000 years old and that it's going to end any second now. He also thinks that Noah's Ark was a real boat, and who thinks that women menstruate and have painful childbirth because a talking snake lied to Eve. And by championing such nonsense from the office of the president, he's insulted and injured our Constitution, even as he has aided and abetted the creeping theocratization of America. But whatever the reason, the president married to the radical religious right, Congress behaving badly, or whether it's just a civilization of such size and technological complexity that we're finally starting to shed our superstitions. The lid is off in this country, and we are like a coiled spring. We're on fire, and I don't mean in the same way as we were during the Inquisition. No, we're blogging, we're writing books, we're appearing on Tucker Carlson, on Bill O'Reilly, Diane Rehm, Al Franken. We're having meetups and conventions. We're having thousands of people on the Mall in D.C. We have celebrities like Julia Sweeney, Bill Maher, Richard Dawkins, and Penn and Teller openly advocating atheism. And we're walking around in public wearing T-shirts that say things like, "This is what an atheist looks like." But the fight's not over, and we're still outnumbered 10-1, but that is changing daily. And we know this because of recent polls. There's a survey called ARIS, the American Religious Identification Survey. It was conducted by the City University of New York Graduate Center in 1990 and again in 2001, with a combined sample size of over 160,000 respondents. In 2001, over 30 million adults claimed no religious affiliation. Call them the nuns. That's 30 million Americans who are either atheist or agnostic or free thinker or secular humanist or who just don't buy it or who just don't want anything to do with religion. That number more than doubled between 1990 and 2001. And that number is now almost 6 years old. In that same period, the number of Christians in this country dropped from 86.2% to 76.5%. That's almost a 10% drop in 11 years. If that trend continues, Christians will be outnumbered by non-Christians by 2042. And when they are in the minority, and when the prayer rugs start coming out, then they will see the wisdom of keeping religion out of government. Some think that Islam is the fastest growing religion in America, but actually Wiccan is growing faster. But so are we. Not that we're a religion, but our numbers are growing faster than Islam. And ours are going up while Christianity's are going down. And our numbers are also at least equal to the number of evangelicals in the United States. But the best survey I've seen recently is one that just came out in October. It's a Harris poll that asked the question, do you believe, does God exist? And 11% of respondents said that they believe that God does not exist. No matter what you call them, those are atheists in my book. But the best sign of all that things are changing is that there are now atheist lobbyists in Washington, D.C. I've been the Virginia State Director for about 3 years. Earlier this year, Ellen Johnson appointed me as the Capitol Hill representative for American Atheists. At the National Convention earlier this year, Arlene asked me to come and talk at the Michigan Atheists Convention. By the way, I know all the state directors, fine people all, but the most accomplished, energetic, and dedicated of them all is your very own Arlene Marie, right here. Anyway, Arlene asked me what would be the title of my speech, and I'd just recently seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, so I said, hey, an atheist goes to Washington. And I was just trying to be clever, but the more I thought about it, the more parallels I began to see. It's a classic story of a little guy against the forces of corruption. Jimmy Stewart, playing Jefferson Smith, he's appointed to a Senate vacancy, inexperienced and naive. He arrives in D.C. just aflutter, absolutely aflutter, with the majesty of democracy, and in love with America, the shining beacon of liberty to which the rest of the world could only aspire. He's ready to dig right in and do some good, but runs head on into a system of legalized bribery, commandeered votes, smoke-filled rooms, backstabbers, bullies, and a bunch of self-serving political opportunists, and plenty of world-class hypocrites. Although none of the ones in the movie were meth-snorting homosexual evangelical. The bad guys in 1939 were, ironically, lobbyists, so corrupt, so shameless, so over the top that they could only exist in the movies. That is, until Enron and WorldCom, and people like Jack Abramoff and Tom DeLay and Bob Ney and Duke Cunningham. All good religious men, by the way. They took corruption to new highs that Frank Capra never imagined. Jefferson Smith finds out the hard way that the Constitution is a quaint, mostly ignored and forgotten historical document. Ignored and forgotten because it frequently poses inconvenient for special interests and ideological extremists. Anyway, earlier this year, right in the thick of the Abramoff